Let's look at the science behind the headlines. Avian flu, or bird flu, has been dominating the media for a while, and this month we saw the first human death from bird flu strain H5N1. It's a tragic reminder that bird flu is a very dangerous virus, and we've been, quite frankly, lucky so far because it's everywhere, and it has been for years. This is nicely demonstrated in Wastewater. This map of the USA has quite a few red and amber-coloured states where influenza A detection was classed as high or medium in wastewater, despite it not being the flu season. This was back in May. That means these red zones probably indicate widespread H5N1 in the environment and not influenza A at all. Now, despite the headlines, the risk to the general public is still low. Let's look at the latest developments, what we can see through the noise, and the answers to the questions landing in my inbox. High pathogenicity avian influenza virus, or HPAIV, is an old virus, first described in the 1950s and has been found in wild birds and in humans since the 1990s. However, in 2021, a variant called clade 2344b started to spread much more quickly among wild and domestic birds and wild mammals worldwide. Since 2021, H5N1 has not stopped spreading. For wild birds and animals, the flu pandemic is already here. The World Organization for Animal Health has reports of hundreds of thousands of deaths, 315 species in 80 countries. We are losing our animals and birds at a catastrophic rate. In 2024, we saw it start to spread in dairy cattle, but going from cow to cow for the first time. It spread through milking equipment and the physical movement of cattle. And this was unexpected because we don't typically see flu in cows, but this is also what flu does. It does unexpected things. This spread among animals, particularly those in close physical proximity to humans, means we are now seeing spillover infections in humans. In other words, the virus keeps jumping from animals to humans, which is bad because every time the virus jumps, it can mutate. The good thing so far is that we haven't yet seen human-to-human transmission. So far, the virus has not mutated to do that. People are mostly catching it from handling infected cows and chickens. Remember, H5N1 has been found in humans since 1997, and historically it has caused severe disease. So this first death in the USA hasn't come as a surprise to the medical community. It was only a matter of time until we started to see severe cases and fatalities. There aren't enough human cases to start drawing patterns of severe disease yet, but typically, flu has been severe and fatal for those with weaker immune systems, children, infants, older adults, and those with comorbidities. And so far, we have still only seen severe disease among these groups. Also, we know the severe cases had exposure to a ton of virus, as opposed to the cases from drinking raw dairy milk where the viral levels were lower. However, in the last year, H5N1 has taken up a lot of brain space for epidemiologists and virologists and veterinarians for three main reasons. First, we're looking at a low probability but high consequence event. The probability of a pandemic in any given year is 2%. Spillovers happen all the time, but very few become pandemics because lots of unlucky things have to happen in sequence. The situation unfolding with H5N1 has increased the probability, though. Centers for Disease Control place the potential risk to humans as moderate, and the probability of a pandemic in 2025 at 5%. This time last year, I would have agreed. Myself, I now think it's nearer 8 or 9%, given that H5N1 continues to spread, largely unchecked. Second, it's now flu season in the Northern Hemisphere, and just look at these numbers for winter 24-25. If just one of these people has caught seasonal flu and bird flu, the bird flu can swap genes, causing a mutation that would enable human-to-human transmission. And thirdly and lastly, the Louisiana patient developed new H5N1 mutations, which increased the virus's ability to bind to human cells. Now, this isn't surprising. Viruses mutate all the time, but it does give us a flavour of what this virus can do. There's still an awful lot we don't know, but in a nutshell, H5N1 is something to watch, but don't let it take up too much of your headspace just yet. Just a little extra care is needed. For us as the general public, there's actually not much we can do yet. Don't drink raw milk, don't touch wild birds. If livestock or farm animals look sick, keep your distance. And if you keep chickens or pet birds, practice scrupulous hygiene. For the rest of us, what do sensible precautions look like? Well, first off, keep your bird feeders stocked up. If you have garden birds, they don't typically carry H5N1. Birds that don't live in big colonies don't present a threat, and there's no recommendation to remove bird feeders unless you have chickens in your garden as well. Secondly, try to keep your cats and dogs away from cattle and wild birds and their feces. Don't let them eat birds that they find or droppings or roll in them. My dog used to love to roll in goose poo for reasons I don't know. And don't give them raw dairy milk. So half of the cats that have died of H5N1 in the US are cats that were given raw milk to drink. What about vaccinations? Do existing flu vaccines work? Well, the short answer is we don't know yet, but they might. H5N1 has some very important similarities to H1N1 in the proteins on its surface. And lab studies have shown that the current vaccines could protect us against H5N1. Finland, for example, has started a vaccination campaign for its farm workers. But other studies have shown that the vaccines we have are not perfect. If H5N1 did become a public health emergency, we would almost certainly need new vaccines. Medical science is working on this already, and new mRNA vaccines are being developed as we speak. What if you catch it? Well, you probably won't know unless you become severely ill. And in that case, seek medical care. The existing antivirals we have do work, so go and seek them if you need them, but only then. Don't panic, buy them up front. There's no point, and it just makes matters worse overall. Any special precautions for water industry? Well, this is not a waterborne disease, and that's worth repeating emphatically. This is not a waterborne disease. Other viruses survive much longer in water than bird flu. For example, poliovirus survives over 60 days in water. Infectious flu virus only survives for 4 days. You can detect RNA for much longer than that, but RNA itself is not infectious. So if we're not getting it from water, how do people catch bird flu? Well, most cases, as we've seen, have come from handling infected chickens or cows and hand-to-mouth transmission. We can't ignore the possibility of aerosol inhalation, but it hasn't yet caused any cases that we know of. So water industry workers face potential risks when they're interacting with untreated lake or rain or river water or untreated sewage. The primary concerns include exposure to infected water, so workers may be at risk if they come into contact with contaminated sources that contain the virus, and handling contaminated wastewater, so untreated sewage can contain viral particles from humans and pets and wild birds and mammals. PPE and hygiene protocols are essential to manage these risks, but it's really important to note that standard PPE and protocols that protect workers from other pathogens are also effective barriers against this one. Avian influenza viruses are susceptible to 3 common disinfection methods. So chlorination, effective at our normal concentrations, but if resistant strains of the virus develop in future, we might need to look at higher doses. Secondly, ozonation, highly effective due to the reactive nature of ozone. It rapidly deactivates viruses. And thirdly, ultraviolet light is generally effective against viruses. Some strains might need a higher UV dose or longer exposure time than others, and we will have to find out about this particular virus. But most importantly, studies indicate that the approach taken in drinking water safety plans, the multiple barrier approach, so combined treatments like chlorine followed by UV, can enhance disinfection efficacy against resistant strains. So I'm not ringing the alarm bells for the water sector just yet, not unless the risk to humans rises. We should all remember our COVID lessons, so wash our hands often with soap and water, keep our hands away from our noses and mouths, and wear masks in highly infective environments like cattle lots or poultry pens. When should the alarm bells go off? Well, we'll know the risk is rising if we start to see human-to-human transmission. And I'll also step up the alert level if we see the more subtle signs of increased risk to humans. If H5N1 starts spreading among pigs is one. Pigs are great mixing vessels and could cause a mutation more quickly. Or if we start to see worrisome mutations spreading among animals. So if the risk level changes, which it can and quickly, we will return to this subject.